Alright, so here I'm going to walk you through how to at least get some data tables and some graphs made for your IA using Google Sheets and Google Docs. So the first thing I'm going to do is present. I'm going to show you just some random data on a random experiment that I make up on the spot. But here's the key points that you're going to need to have for your IA. So right now, first thing you want to do is go to Google Docs, because you're going to write your IA report on Google Docs and share it with me. That way I can kind of follow what you're doing and kind of give you some feedback. So I would recommend that you check out that feedback often, because I will give you feedback on that. Now, as you open Google Docs, one thing that you're going to have in your Google IA is, I'm going to just number these things that you need. The first thing you need to have is sort of an exploration piece. So exploration. Now, exploration is kind of like how is your lab designed? You want to be able to explain to myself and IB what did you do in your lab and why. So with this, for right now, I'm going to ask you that you just simply have a picture of your experiment. You take a picture with your phone and upload that picture of your experiment, of your setup in here, and then explain what the picture is. Explain what the things are in your picture. Make a clear picture and explain what that picture is. I will grade you on your picture, and I'll grade you on your explanation of your picture. Next thing for sure you're going to need to have in your exploration is kind of like a step-by-step procedure. So with that, you're going to have a detailed description of what you did and why you did it. We'll come back to that one later. Later on in your report, you're going to have some data. And we're going to start with the raw data. Now, for your data, I would recommend making it in Google Docs, but also in Google Sheets. I'm going to show you how to do that in a bit. Because when you make the data in Google Sheets, you can actually make a graph with it and transfer that graph onto Google Docs. So I'll come back to the data part. And then finally, you're going to need a graph. And I'll talk about the graph, or graphs. It's nice to have multiple graphs. And then your analysis. And then analysis is very important. So this lesson, I'm just going to focus on the data and the graphs. This is a very basic introduction of it. And then we'll start filling in all our pieces later. So for that, obviously, you'll take a picture of your experiment. You'll have your data. And for your data table, what I will do, I'm going to do a real simple one. I'm just going to do mass and volume. So I'm going to say, how does the volume affect the mass of an object? If I have more volume of something, how does that affect the mass? Or how does the density affect these two things? So I would do like an insert table here. And even with those things, you're going to have multiple columns here. So what I would do is I would say, all right, mass in kilograms. And then I'll do uncertainty. We're going to come back and do uncertainty of mass. And then I'll do like volume in liters. Should be cubic meters, but I'll just do liters. And then uncertainty in volume. And then density in kilogram per liter. And then I'll even do another one, insert column to the right, uncertainty and density. So any calculation or any measurement you make, you're going to have so any calculation or any measurement you make, you're going to have uncertainty with it. That's a big piece of the component as well. So then I'll type in my numbers, whatever they are, and I'll have at least 5 things I'm comparing, at least 5 things. The more things you have, the better your IA is going to be. Now this is a very, very basic experiment. I wouldn't do this experiment for IA. It's way too simple for IP2 level class. But I just want to show you what you would be doing with this. So you have your data table here. I'm also going to go to Google Sheets. So I'll go to Google Sheets. and bada boom, click on that. And I want to show you how to make a graph. Go to Google Sheets. Now, as we're thinking about it, the density equation is mass over volume. So if I make a graph and I want to plot density on that graph as well, see the relationship between mass and volume, mass over volume is going to be y over x. So the way you make the graph is whatever you put in the A column, that's your x values. So I want to put, in this case, volume in liters on my x-axis. And I want to put mass in kilograms on my y-axis. Now, one thing you need to do is I would label these. Label your x-axis in that box. Label your y-axis in this box. And here's where I can put my numbers. So I collected my data, and all right, my first volume was 1 liter. Then my next volume was 2 liters. Then it was 3 liters. Then I just went up by 1 liter increments. And my mass went 10, 21, 32. Maybe I just, these are the mass measurements I had for kilograms. 40 through 39, and we'll go 50, 49, whatever. I just made these numbers up. Now, obviously, we'll come back to it and do uncertainty, but the way to make the data table then, or the graph, is you highlight this. You highlight these columns. Don't worry about the top two. It automatically fills it in. Go to Insert, Chart. And then it gives you a chart. Look at that. It gives you a chart. You can move this chart around. And then one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, so it has the dots. It has the axes labeled, so volume in liters, mass in kilograms. It has a title. Nice, nice, nice. All good things. Now I'm going to go to Customize. I want to customize this chart. I want to put in some information. So I'm going to go to Series under Customization, and I'm going to put in a trend line. Click on Trend Line. Now, don't automatically assume it's linear. It might not be. You might have to play around with some of these other functions and see which one best matches up. Or you might have to just know what the equation is, because I know that density is mass divided by volume. So as mass goes up, volume goes up, or as volume goes up, mass goes up. I know that that's going to be linear. But if you know the physics equation, use the equation that matches it up. Mine is linear. Another thing I need to do is show the equation. Not the r squared equation. I don't care about that. I want the equation for this graph. I also want error bars. Now, when you do uncertainty, that's when you can put your error bars in. You're going to do uncertainty as a separate thing, and then click on error bars, and we'll just do a percentage uncertainty. So let's say my percentage uncertainty values, I'm going to find the maximum percentage that it was off, and I'll put that in. So maybe I did all my measurements, and my worst uncertainty was 15%. I would just put in 15%, and it shows those error bars nice for me. But I do need to find out where to put in the y equals equation. I'm going to go to label. No, it's hard to find. It's not. Don't click on this. I don't care about the r squared value. The label. So you click under label, use equation. Use equation. Now it tells me the equation is y equals 9.6x plus 1.4. It gives me an equation for that line. So that tells me that, hey, as the volume increases by 1 liter, the mass is going to increase by 9.6 kilograms. And there's a intercept of 1.4. Now, obviously, it's not perfect, and then you can talk about uncertainty, like, hey, it should be 0 and 0, and it should have no intercept here. But with your uncertainty, it kind of ties that in. Now what I can do is I can say, all right, I want to right-click on this graph, or I can click on it and go copy. I could go back to my document, and when I'm ready to put my graph in, I can click on paste, and it'll paste that graph. It has the title, it has my equation, it has my best fit line, it has the error bars, has both axes labeled. And this is what we're looking for. We're looking for all those things in your graph. Are your axes labeled? Do you have an equation? Do you have a best fit line? Do you have error bars? Do you have a title? It's always y, whatever the y is, divided by the x. And then, obviously, in the analysis, then you describe that graph. Now, like I said, this is a very basic experiment. Do not do this experiment for IA. It will not score very well. But I just want to show you what you do. And then what you could do to make it pretty, because obviously you have your data here, but it's not very organized. I would retype your data in these values. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And then you put your insert P here, and then your mass, whatever you had, and then you calculate your density. And hey, it should match your slope. Your slope should be your density. So that's it for this lesson. I'm going to stop sharing here, and yeah, I'll help you guys through the IA. But this year is going to be kind of interesting because we are doing it virtually, mostly, and still looking for the same requirements. So step 1, take a picture of your experiment. Get a raw data table. Don't worry about uncertainty right now. Keep track of it if you can right now, because it'll save you some time later on. But just get some raw data, and I would say at least 5 by 5, meaning like you have you're changing your one variable 5 times and you're collecting 5 pieces of data at least. And then make a graph with that. Make a graph, have a best fit line for it, have your x's labeled, and we'll come back and do uncertainty later. But keep that information saved so that way you can always go back to it and tweak it. And I'll leave comments on your Google Docs. So I want to see a picture, a raw data table, and a graph for this week.